Well, hello and welcome back to the Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Colantuono. I am a certified financial planner up here in our Boston, Massachusetts offices. We've got about 2.5 feet of snow on the ground up here, shockingly. But needless to say, this is not a podcast about the weather. You're here to learn about financial planning, and we are glad you are with us. Today's episode is a fun one. Well, I guess not so fun of an episode if you find yourself in this situation, because what we're talking about today, folks, it's all about lost money. And not lost money because the stock market fell in value or because you made a bad investment, but lost money because you made a change in life that resulted in perhaps some money getting left behind. And what I'm talking about here is leaving money with an old employer and in an old employer plan that you now have just lost track of. And I know you might be listening to this podcast and saying, come on, Nick, who loses track of their money? But you'd be surprised. It was actually estimated in the year 2023, Americans lost track of nearly 30 million 401k accounts. 30 million 401ks. And if you think 30 million is a big number, the amount of money in those 30 million plans that got lost track of, how about $1.65 trillion? So if you don't think this is a big problem out there, oh, it is. So you have to ask yourself, do you have money with an old employer? Maybe there was a place you only worked a year or two, and maybe that was 20, 25, 30 years ago. Did you ever roll that money to an IRA, or did you just leave it where it was? Now, again, if you left it where it was, that might not be such a bad thing, but you need to make sure that that money is still where you left it. It can be very confusing when this happens. I can tell you, folks, horror stories after horror stories about, people leaving money behind in these old employer-sponsored plans, and, all of a sudden they go to get their hands on that money, and, oh, that plan moved. It went from this provider to that provider, or this institution to that institution. So, folks, ask yourselves, could you be one of those folks? One of those 30 million people who could be missing out on potentially several hundred thousands of dollars in retirement accounts? Well, let's think about it, right? If you can't locate an old 401k that you had, there are likely three places where it's going to be. One, it could still be with your previous employer. So if you call the old institution that plan was with and they say it's not there anymore, go directly to the employer. Ask the employer, did this 401k plan move? Maybe you received paperwork on it and you just didn't do anything, or maybe it was, again, 20 or 30 years ago. So, again, place number one where that money could be is still with your previous employer. It doesn't mean it's in that same plan where you left it, but if it's with that employer will be able to tell you very clearly where that money or where that plan now lives. And then you can reach out to the plan sponsor or the plan provider and say, hey, this is my information and, where's my money? Option number two, one thing that could have happened is maybe they moved that old plan while keeping it with the same employer, but maybe moved it to a new provider, right? So first, go to the old employer. Second, if it's not in that old provider, well, reach out to the employer and say, did this money move? It could still very well be in the company 401 plan, but just with a different investment institution. Or what could have happened is they closed your plan because it had been so long since they heard from you, and that money was then sent to the unclaimed property division in your state. Now, like I mentioned, I'm one of our advisors up here in our Boston office. Here in Massachusetts, we have a state-operated website. It's from the state of Massachusetts Unclaimed Property Division. It's called findmassmoney.com. You've probably heard the commercials on the radio. So it's worth a look, right? You could be one of those people out there that has money that you've just kind of forgotten about, or that got left behind, or maybe it got moved and got distributed to the unclaimed property division without really even you knowing about it. So again, if you find yourself in this position where you've left one employer, you're now with a new employer, and you said to yourself, I definitely have money. I had a 401k there, or, I worked at a job and I was contributing to a pension plan, but maybe I'm not fully vested in that pension, but there's still money that I've put in there that's owed to me. go to findmassmoney.com, reach out to your old employers, reach out to your old plan provider. They'll have your information on file if, in fact, you are a customer of theirs or a client of theirs or a former employee of theirs. So you have options. Let's unpack them a little bit. Step one, like we mentioned, contact your old employer. Now, it's important to know if your account had more than $5,000 in it, they would likely not just close that out, send it to the unclaimed property division, or move it to a new plan. You likely still have money in that old plan if, again, it was more than $5,000. If it was less than that, it's very likely they could have just cut you a check and mailed it to you. Or if they had your banking information on file, they could have just distributed the money, direct deposited it, and it could have been something that you weren't really even aware of, right? Now, if it were $5,000 or less, as I mentioned, there are some options. They could have sent it to unclaimed property if it had been so long since they heard from you. They could have distributed it to your bank, right, where they would do a mandatory tax withholding and then it got distributed to your bank. Or they could have created an IRA for you and actually moved the money into it. Now, if that's the case, I would like to think that that IRA provider is at least sending you statements or updates or email communication or something to make you aware that this change happened. And I understand when you go from one employer to another, you're starting a new job. It's very overwhelming. You're training and there's all sorts of things. You're trying to get acclimated to your new environment. And oftentimes you're getting communication from your old employer and you're just kind of disregarding it, right? So it's very easy in that transitional phase for things to fall through the cracks. And unfortunately, for many people out there, again, 30 million people out there in 2023 just lost track of retirement money. Think about that. That's $1.65 trillion. That would have meaningful impact on, millions of people's lives. I have no doubt about it. So again, 5,000 or more, the money's likely in the same place. 5,000 or less, well, maybe they rolled it into an IRA for you. Or again, if it's 1,000 or less, like a small account, you were just working with someplace for 6 months or something like that, likely they just wrote a check, mailed it to you. Now, if you don't recall receiving that check, it was eventually probably stopped payment on or canceled, and then the money went back. So the money could still be in that plan. So again, contact your old employer. I can't stress this enough. What I always tell people, and I call it Rule 101. I say Rule 101 is when you leave an employer, take your money with you, right? Because even though it seems uncommon, 30 million people, are wishing that they took that money with them, right? It's easy to lose track of these accounts when it's jumping from one provider to another, or, when all of a sudden you're wrapped up in the day-to-day of what you have going on. It's very easy to lose track. So like we said, if you do go to your old employer and you can't find where the plan is, or you call the plan provider and they can't verify that you're an account holder, or your employer is saying, oh, we distributed that money, and you still can't find it, well, that's when you're going to want to go to any publicly available database out there for you. And again, the one here in Massachusetts for all of our Massachusetts customers, and myself included, is findmassmoney.com. It's simply a website, created, published by the state of Massachusetts Unclaimed Property Division. I am sure that there is something similar to this in the state of Connecticut. So for all of our Connecticut viewers and listeners, make sure you go to Connecticut's Unclaimed Property Division website. So there's a few different options there. Obviously, here in Massachusetts, Find Mass Money. There's also a Department of Labor for retirement savings. Sort of lost and found, they call it. And there's also a national registry for unclaimed retirement benefits. So there are resources out there for you folks. If you know in the back of your mind, I have money, it's out there somewhere. I just can't remember, the name of that employer. It was 20 or 30 years ago, or was that account with, this institution or that institution, or I know it was at that plan, but now you call that plan and they say it's not there. And, again, this stuff can be very, very confusing and overwhelming. And nobody out there likes losing money. So imagine how stressful it would be to lose track of an entire account that could have just buckets of money in it, especially if it was something set up 20 or 30 years ago. Where was the market 20 or 30 years ago? And where's the market today? So again, that money could have compounded and grown and still been in a place where it's working for you. And, I will also say, folks, there is nothing better than found money. So if you have money floating around out there that you have just lost track of, you owe yourself a favor to go out and find it. So in conclusion here, tracking down an old 401k or a lost retirement account or an old pension benefit, it is well worth the effort, right? Even a small balance, although it may have been forgotten many, many years ago, it could accumulate and grow significantly over time to a much more meaningful amount today. So do yourself a favor. Reach out to your old employer, reach out to your old plan provider. If that seems to be a dead end, reach out to the state that you live in, the unclaimed property division. Reach out to the National Registry of Unclaimed Retirement Account Balances. If you're still in connection or communication with someone that you used to work with at an old firm, maybe talk to them and say, where's that plan? Or are you still there? Or did you move your money? And also just look back at your records. There could be a scenario where they just distributed that money to you. They just sent you a check or they just sent you a direct deposit and maybe you didn't even notice. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case there as well. But the facts are the facts and they're daunting. Again, in 2023, an estimated 30 million 401k accounts were just lost track of. That totaled $1.65 trillion in assets. That money would go a long, long way for a lot of people out there who are now entering this phase of life where they need to start paying themselves. It's all about what's coming in, what's going out, and what assets do you have to make up that difference, right? So folks, if all of this is saying to you, I need a plan, right? Maybe I didn't lose money with an old employer, but maybe I'm over 59 and a half. Maybe I'm retiring in 2-3 years and all my money's in my employer's 401k. And wait, my employer's 401k is all in the market. Is that appropriate for me at this phase of life? So again, I can't stress enough the options, the flexibility, the availability that exists to just have more of a plan in place with your retirement money. And if you want some resources on that, we've actually written a guide. It's this book that you see here over my right-hand shoulder. It's our ultimate 401k guide. So much of the work we do is all about, okay, you're now a lot closer to the end of your working life than the beginning of it. Let's put a plan in place for this money, this nest egg that you've worked 20, 30, 40 years to accumulate. Because all of a sudden, you're a lot closer to the end of your working life than the beginning of it. Markets at all-time highs. It's a little bit of a crazy place. But when we know that you are approaching the precipice of the game changing as fundamentally as it does when you go from working and earning and saving and contributing to now all of a sudden that stops and you now need to start taking money out of these accounts, you need to know, one, where those accounts are, but you also need to know how to build a plan that's appropriate for that next phase of life. So to help you address all of it, we wrote this book. It's called The Ultimate 401k Guide. It's going to talk about all the options that you have with your money. I emphasize your money. Oftentimes, money in these 401ks, it's been with these institutions. It's been in these plans for so long that they practically think it's their money. Folks, I can't stress enough, it is your money. And when you have the ability to have more flexibility and more control over your money, it's typically something that you should take advantage of. So that's why we wrote this book. It talks about your ability to move money out of a 401k. It talks about options when it comes to actively managing money within 401ks. It talks about, do you move it out to an IRA? Do you move it to a Roth? Why you would, why you wouldn't, why you should, why you shouldn't, right? So there's a lot of conversations that we're having with folks around, how to be structuring 401k money as you approach this next phase of life. So if you want this book, which I encourage you to get, it's called The Ultimate 401k Guide. Text the word guide, Guide, text our team at 800-757-0436. We will get you your free copy of The Ultimate 401k Guide. Again, you turn 59 and a half, you have a lot more flexibility and control over that money. Maybe not while it lives in that 401k, but that's why this book will tell you, well, what are my options? How is Nick and the team over at Johnson Brunetti helping folks when it comes to increasing flexibility, increasing control, increasing safety with money that they have in these plans? The world, as far as retirement planning, really becomes your oyster when you either leave an employer and you have the ability to roll 401k money to an IRA, or even if you're working with your existing employer, if you're over 59 and a half, you can move that money to an IRA. You can then put more higher level planning in place around Roth conversions or implementing safety nets. So again, 59 and a half is kind of the magic number when it comes to moving 401k money. And that's exactly why we wrote this book. It's such a large part of what we do and the conversations that we're having that we wrote a book about it. So to get your hands on this book, text the word guide, GUIDE, text our team at 800-757-0436. We will get you your free copy of the Ultimate 401k Guide. Now, here we are. We are at our mailbag minute. So usually I ask these questions to a co-host of mine, but today I'm going to ask them to myself. And it's good because I've got a lot of questions here, but I just picked 3 off the top. So our first question is all about managing a 401k in retirement. So this, I'm guessing this is going to be what we just hit on. The question is, Nick, should I have frozen my 401k when I retired? And will it recover when I need it in a few years? This is an interesting question. The fact that this viewer says they're already retired, meaning they're no longer with this employer, and the fact that they asked if that 401k would recover by the time they need it in a few years, that tells me that that money was with an old employer, still in the market, in a place where unfortunately the market fell in value and that money fell with it. So the question around, Nick, should I have frozen my 401k? Well, that, I'm trying to get to the question behind the question here is, Nick, should I have made that 401k safe? This is where I go back to the flexibility and control that you have with money so long as it lives under the umbrella of an employer-sponsored plan. Think about your 401k with your employer. We all know the way they work, right? Every year you get a list of 15 or 20 mutual funds that your employer has deemed appropriate for the employees of your company. And then it's up to you to choose the mix there. And in regards to this viewer's question around freezing that 401k, your only safe options within a 401k is a stable value fund, basically a money market fund, cash, which you're lucky right now if any one of those are paying, north of 4%. So if this client truly valued safety and security, yes, a recommendation would have been, okay, rule 101, you leave an employer, take that money with you. What that means is you create a rollover IRA, you move that 401k money into the IRA. That's not a taxable event. Now that you have money in the IRA, it's in your name, it's in your control. You have total flexibility when it comes to where that money's going to live. Come in and have a conversation with myself or someone on my team, and we'll figure out the right approach for you. How much growth do you need? What should the money in that world look like? How much income do you need? What are those portfolios, or what should the money in that world look like? And if you do value safety and security and you want that as part of your plan, how can we make sure that your money is working as hard for you as you've worked for it, where it's going to be guaranteed, it's going to be insured, it's going to be in a place where it's never, ever, ever going to fall in value? So great question. Next question we have is all about 401k rollovers. It says, can I roll my 401k into an existing IRA that I've had for several years without penalty or without paying tax on it? Yeah, absolutely. So again, for this person, they might be working, or this 401k might be with an employer that they're no longer affiliated with, but they already have an IRA structured. That's perfect. Consolidate, simplify, reach out to the old employer, roll that old 401k money into that new IRA. That is not a taxable event. In most cases, it will not cost anything. There might be a, $20, $30 processing fee or something like that. But typically it comes right out of the account. You don't have to worry about it. So yeah, great question. No taxes, no penalties, as long as it goes into an IRA and it was the right kind of money. Our final question is all about Roth conversions. So this is where taxes come into play. This question is it wise to take money out of my 401k and put it into a Roth IRA? It's a great question. There are plenty of scenarios I can think of where that would be wise, but we have to ask ourselves, what are the objectives? Because moving money from a 401k into a Roth IRA, if the money within the 401k is not Roth money or not after-tax money, so we're talking about traditional, 401k money going into a Roth IRA. When you make that move, when you do that conversion, you pay taxes on every dollar that you convert. So if you're still working and you're still in those high earning income years and you're in a high tax bracket, and all of a sudden you convert your old 401k that has $100,000 or $200,000 in it, well, guess what? Your income just went up by that $100,000 or that $200,000. That is not the time to do it. But I would recommend moving that IRA or moving that 401k into an IRA. Again, that is not the taxable event. And then when your work situation changes, where you go out of those high earning income years into maybe the early years of retirement, or you're starting to slow down, you find yourself in a lower tax bracket, that's the point where we would be game planning Roth conversions. You don't want to pay more taxes than you need to. And there would be a point in time where even though a Roth conversion, what you're basically doing is paying more taxes now than you need to, there might be a great case for saying, yeah, you should. Right? If we know that right now you're going to be in the lowest tax bracket that you're ever going to be in, and all of a sudden 5 or 10 years from now, required minimum distributions are going to be such where you jump into the higher tax bracket, well, let's be moving money now. Right? If we determine that your taxes are on sale, I don't know about you, but I like buying things on sale. So the idea behind Roth conversions is let's go buy your taxes when they're on sale. So viewers, this is a great question. I really appreciate it. So folks, one last time, to get your hands on our ultimate 401k guide, these conversations about moving 401k assets to an IRA, or moving 401k assets and converting into a Roth, or how to increase safety in your 401k, or how to get better growth than what's available to you in the 401k. It's such a large part of what we do. We wrote a book about it. Where am I going? Right there. And we want you to get your hands on that book. So to get your free ultimate 401k guide, text the word guide, GUIDE, text our team at 800-757-0436, and we will get you your ultimate 401k guide. Once more, text guide, GUIDE, text us at 800-757-0436, and we will get you your ultimate 401k guide. So folks, I really appreciate the viewership. I appreciate the listenership. We appreciate you joining, as always, on the Money Wisdom Podcast. So for myself, Nick Colantuono, certified financial planner up here in our Boston, Massachusetts offices, we appreciate you being with us today, and we will see you next time on the Money Wisdom Podcast.
Johnson Brunetti is a marketing name for the businesses of JB Capital and JN Financial. Investment advisory services offered through JB Capital LLC. Insurance products offered through JN Financial LLC.